Well, hello, Debbie. We are so glad to have you on today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Beth. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay. This is such a great topic. There's a lot of ADHD diagnoses out there.
Right.
And I'm really excited to talk to you about it because there's different, I don't know what you would call that. There's different levels?
Yeah, there are different components to ADHD.
Yes, different
Yes.
components. Great. One of those is so interesting and it sounds maybe so sort of, I guess, normal, if you will, is that I have a good number of parents who get really frustrated
Yes.
with something as simple as, hey, could you lock the door when you come home? Or, you know, clean up, your dinner so the dogs don't get it. And they just don't do it. And it's
Right.
extremely frustrating. And it causes also, the parents tend to think, well, they're being disrespectful or they're
Yeah.
just being a jerk, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Can you relate to that?
I can completely relate to that. So, yes, I'm a therapist. I'm also a parent of a young adult with ADHD. And I'll just share this really quickly. Okay. That makes me want to laugh a little bit. Um, so she's 23 and she's living at home. She's doing stuff that she should be doing. She goes to make tea and we have this induction stove top, which is fairly new because we just remodeled our kitchen 2 years ago. So we love it. And I love it being in pristine condition. And so she takes care of her tea, she puts in enough water, and then she puts the kettle back on the stovetop and forgets to turn it off.
Ah,
Kettle's, after the water evaporates, the kettle's cracking and damaged, and then the stovetop has a little crack in it. But this is fairly typical of somebody with ADHD forgetting to turn the stove off, forgetting to lock the door, forgetting to feed the dogs. It's frustrating for people that live with them. And that's why it affects relationships. And that's why it affects jobs. And that's why it affects the relationship with teachers and
yeah.
academics and that sort of thing. And that's why it affects them as far as the response that they get. And they develop these little traumas, and literally they can develop PTSD from just getting all this feedback that there's nothing wrong with you. I mean, it's very heartbreaking. It's frustrating and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like with my own kid, the overwhelm that
Yes.
he feels with, I would perceive as a simple ask, if you, right? I
Yes.
think of it as a simple ask
Yes.
and it completely overwhelms him.
Right.
And I'm left, I have learned and still learning on, wait a second,
Mhm.
just because I think it's simple doesn't mean he does, and trying to figure out the parent part in that, right? My part
Yes.
in, and a lot of parents, do things, I guess they try to do things out of love, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And so there's that, boy, a fine balance, right? Between, oh, I can have some accommodations here, but also parents end up over accommodating.
Yes, they do. Yes,
Let's
they
talk.
do.
Let's talk about that. Like over accommodating. What does that look like, and how can it be detrimental to the person with ADHD?
Right. So the ideal situation is a parent that provides a lot of support and scaffolding without doing everything
Mm,
for their child, but teaching them the skills. So that's really the fine line. It's skill building versus doing for them. And when they're younger, right, you start that pattern of doing for the child what they should be doing for themselves, but it might take longer, right?
okay.
And so, over accommodating, sometimes we even call it enabling. And I think all of
Sure.
us who have kids with ADHD have done that. I mean, I don't know how we could get away with not doing it. And then we learn, like you said, we learn, we do it differently, and maybe we read books. I have training. I used to work with ADHD when I was a therapist before I had a child. I've worked with it a ton. So I defaulted to that pretty quickly, but I still made these mistakes. but we are making decisions for children that we want them to make for themselves, and then they become very indecisive, for example. And
Oh, wow. Sure.
yes, they can make very poor with ADHD. I mean, you've got impulsivity, with the hyperactive, poor planning abilities and time management, and so they can make the truth is they can make terrible decisions, but we got to let them fail a little bit. They do take more risks than their peers.
Sure.
And so we need to allow them the right amount of failure, and we need to allow them to make decisions. So we don't want to say, what do you want for dinner? We can say, do you want pasta or do you want steak? Or, whatever reasonable options are, and just make it really simple. I mean, that's a very simple example too.
No, that I like that. I like the simple examples.
Yeah.
Um, the decisions that we tend to make for that are like ADHD kids. Do you have an example of something that could like you're saying they turn kind of indecisive? Because is it because they lack the experience with themselves and so then they just don't trust themselves?
Yes, it is. They start to depend more on whoever's providing the support, the parents, maybe it's a certain parent, and they don't trust themselves. And the dynamic really lends itself to that, right?
Right.
Not trusting themselves to make decisions about, I mean, it could be serious, really, healthy relationships, for example, something as simple as when to eat,
Right.
what to eat, when to go to bed, because we're telling them to get up and go to bed all the time. I mean, part of that is their job with the younger folks, but then we want
Right.
them to start creating their own scaffolding and applying their own uh, skill building or structure, applying their own structure. We want to be able to pull away from all the structuring that we're doing and have them do it, and have them be able to make decisions about what to eat, when to eat, who is a healthy relationship option. What kind of decision do they make if suddenly they're around folks that are smoking a lot of weed? For the
Indeed.
ADHD brain, that's more severe, more serious than it is for the neurotypical brain. And they're more likely to develop addictions because of the ADHD brain. It's not their fault.
Right.
It's part of ADHD. It's a neurological problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So how can parents see or attune to the difference between, oh, this is a like a capability issue
Mhm.
versus just a I don't want to issue, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I have a lot of empathy for parents, from my own experience and from working with so many, that I understand why parents go there. Uh, so it really requires parent training. So we have to train ourselves to behave differently with our children. And if we get triggered, because we get triggered by their behavior, they're just
Totally.
not listening. They're not respecting me. They're not respecting the house rules.
They can't get up.
They can't get up. Yeah, I know. Trying to, by the time they're in high school, it's like you're burnt out on just getting them up in the morning,
Yep.
And so we have to train ourselves and teach ourselves and provide interventions on ourselves, telling ourselves over and over, it is not their fault. This is a brain issue. It's
Yeah.
neurological.
Oh,
They need to learn this skill. And guess what, Beth? I mean, this is the part that really burns us out. So the folks with ADHD get burnt out on having it, but the parents that are supporting them and in the future, spouses or what have you, get burnt out on this too. We can't take our foot off the brake. Like when they are under our care, when they're dependents, we have to be really, really consistent with all the scaffolding that we're providing
mm,
and be very intentional. And we can't take our foot off the brakes. And then we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, it is not their fault. We get triggered because we're frustrated. They didn't lock the door. There are consequences to that.
yeah.
And our default mode may be to just take it personally.
That's where I was headed for sure. It's like, not only is it not their fault, but they're not doing this to me.
They're not. They're
Right.
not doing it to diss you.
Right.
They're
Well, and that's what it feels like. It really does.
nervous.
It
It
does. It feels like they are disrespecting you, the parent. It
does.
feels like it's intentional. It feels like they're being just an ass on purpose.
Absolutely, it does. It
I
does.
used to think that all the time, like, you must hate me. Because he can't come home on time, or
Right.
because he doesn't return a text, or oh good it was, or because he would explode because he was so overwhelmed. And then I'm like, it
Yeah.
was three things. Like, what is the matter with you? Like,
Yeah.
that's what I would be thinking, and it probably said back in the day before I did some of
Right.
my own work.
Right. 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 Well,
Right.
and we all have, yeah. But that's
Yeah, for
exactly
sure.
right. We do take it personally. We get triggered. We've
Yeah.
got our stuff. And I'll tell you that having a child with ADHD has taught me to really take care of my stuff. I mean, it's like there's a lot to work on. There's a lot.
Seriously.
But yeah, we do get triggered. We take it personally. Unfortunately, the rest of the world does too. And that's where it affects other relationships and relationships with peers and teachers and
Yeah.
employers.
Yes. Yeah, it really does.
Um,
And I think this, I guess, society, if you will, is
mhm.
built on neurotypical
Yes.
brains, which is fascinating because I'm not even, I don't know the ratio between how many neurotypical brains and how many neurodivergent brains, but it sure seems like maybe
I know.
there's more on the divergent side.
I know these days, especially,
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. No,
And so
it,
people,
it
teachers, possibly some teachers don't understand, right? And they're taking things personal
yeah,
too. And like you said, the employers and the bosses. And I
yeah.
mean, it's like, how do you run a business if your employee doesn't come on time? Like, I
Yeah,
get it.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's true. It's true. There are certain offenses. I don't that's not quite the right word, but there are certain
Yeah.
behaviors that take place in the workplace. You're going to be terminated immediately.
Right.
If you get overwhelmed. I mean, I've known some adults, well, on the younger side, kind of under 30, that they get emotionally overwhelmed and they've had literally tantrums in interviews, tantrums in the workplace,
Yeah.
and you're gone after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so we have to learn how not to take it personally as parents, but then we also have to be their advocates because there are a lot of teachers that don't understand it. There are the great teachers,
Yeah.
and then there are the teachers that get equally frustrated,
Mm.
critical, and disparaging. And they might say things, well, just take the phone away. We do need to manage the phones for sure, but like they'll have a very simple response,
Yeah.
just do this, make sure they do their 2 hours of homework, and then give them a reward. Well, yes, we do need to make them sit down and do their homework, and we do need to give them rewards. But guess what? If they've got ADHD, they're not going to be able to sit for 2 hours. They're
No.
going to sit for 20 minutes. They need 5 minutes of a break, and then another 20 minutes, and then another 5 minutes. And then we, the parents, oh, isn't this fun? We have to manage that
Yeah.
over and over and over consistently until they can start internalizing to do that on their own.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, I love this because, yeah, I do think it's for sure a parent's responsibility to be their child's advocate,
Mhm.
right? And helping the child of any age,
Mhm.
um, learn how to self-advocate, right?
Yes.
And learn how to
Absolutely.
say, hey, actually, I'm I would do much better if I had dot dot dot, if I had a break, and that is hard to get to. And no 6-year-old could possibly say that for themselves, or even a 15-year-old, who knows?
Right.
Um, right. So the parents
Yeah.
can step in and really, I think sometimes even acknowledging ADHD is a real thing. I know that kind of sounds maybe obvious, but I know parents who are like, yeah, whatever. They
Yeah.
dismiss it.
Yeah. No, it's true.
It's a real thing.
Real thing. And it actually helps everybody if you formalize it and get the diagnosis.
Great.
No, the majority of the times it helps the person with ADHD
Yeah.
to know that this is happening in your brain. You're not doing this on purpose because what this is part of what happens is it's like their personality gets attacked, their character gets attacked by society, by parents. There's a lot of criticism that happens
Yeah.
instead of focusing more on, well, this is hard for you. This is something that you have to manage. It is in your brain. Your brain is different than your peers, your friends,
Yeah.
your classmates, or what have you. And you got to do more work than the average person. And it's unfair, but this is what you got to do. And it's not your fault. You still have to be responsible, kind of
Yeah.
thing. So
Absolutely.
it can really help parents. But I have met parents who've had ADHD that
Yes.
refuse to acknowledge it in themselves and in their child because of the stigma. All kinds of
Yes.
the stigma, they're afraid of medicating.
Right.
It usually comes down to stigma and shame, and maybe shame that they even have within themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And
Can you talk maybe a little bit more about that? Like, what do you see as the stigma when you're working with kids with ADHD and parents?
there's still a lot of stigma around mental health issues in general.
Yeah.
Bottom line, it's that how do you feel about having a mental health issue? How do you feel about having a child with a mental health issue? Some parents take it in stride, and others feel like it's a personal setback of their own.
Right. It's their fault or something.
It's their fault. There's something that's wrong with them as a parent, and there's something that's wrong with their child, which reflects on them.
Yes. Oh,
Because they
100%.
100%.
Yeah. Because
They
we totally had that. Like, sorry,
Yeah, go
we
ahead.
had teachers and neighbors, saying, "Oh, well," like you said, those kind of pat answers, like, "Well, you just need to do that, or you just
Yeah,
need to make them," or and
yeah,
it feels really crappy to a parent
it does.
to have the like, well, how come you just have to tell them?
Right, exactly, just tell them.
Just
Yeah,
tell them.
oh, if only. I mean, if only you heard how many times I have repeated this to my child. And this is the other, uh, situation that happens with parents. It's really heartbreaking, which you've probably experienced, I know I have, is that other parents compare kids, right?
Uh-huh.
We're all doing that. We're all doing
Yes.
And, um, and teachers do the same thing. And so the parents receive a lot of judgment. The kids are receiving the judgment because there's something wrong with them, and the parents are being judged. And the other parents only have to be good enough parents with neurotypical kids.
Right.
Literally, the good enough parent is a thing.
Right.
In therapy, the kids do fine. You can make a ton of mistakes with
Right.
your kids. For us, it's a different standard. The mistakes have more dire consequences. We have to be a little bit more hypervigilant about how we support our children. And we have to be more organized, more structured. I mean, if we have ADHD, it makes it even that much harder
Yeah. More
to,
boundaried.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, because we have to
Let's
be consistent.
Right? Yeah. Let's talk about ADHD and dysregulation.
Yes, it's a
Okay.
very important topic. Mhm.
Yeah. Help me understand or help us understand like maybe some of that's things that are happening in the brain and why, right? The dislike because I my term was always like he's such a hothead.
Yeah,
That was like how I explained it.
yeah,
And now like, oh, he, has ADHD.
right.
Yeah. What would what's really going on?
Yeah, no, I think that's really a good point. I mean, I think it's good to think of ADHD in general as an executive functioning challenge versus just like a behavioral issue because it hits so many parts of life,
Yeah.
including emotional, right? So,
Yes.
so the brain is wired in a certain way. Developmentally, kids mature later if they've got ADHD than their peers by a few years. Okay.
Okay.
So, and then where the executive functioning happens in the prefrontal cortex, that is very delayed. The other thing is the hormonal balance is different with kids with ADHD. This is really important. So we all know about dopamine, right?
Mm,
Dopamine gives us a sense of pleasure. We seek
indeed.
it, you know, and kids with ADHD have lower levels of dopamine than their peers.
Yeah. So there's where the risk
Yeah,
comes in and the impulsivity,
exactly.
everything, anything to trigger it, right?
Everything, and norepinephrine, which is also a hormone, but And the way these hormones interplay, it makes people with ADHD more reactive, more prone to addiction because, again, they're seeking some pleasure. So they're more likely to hyper focus on computer games.
Yeah.
More likely if they experiment with substances to become addicted than their peers. But it's also that sort of thing of hyper focusing on a pleasurable activity helps them to manage their emotions. It's very difficult to manage emotions and impulsivity around emotions. So people with ADHD do get triggered much more easily,
Yeah.
and their emotions, all emotions, feel more overwhelming than they do
Ugh.
with their peers. So little frustrations for somebody that doesn't have ADHD, they can say, well, that's annoying and kind of blow it off. But somebody with ADHD can get overwhelmed. They might yell. They might fall out and have that tantrum that we were
Yeah, and
talking
they go from like 0 to 100 like that.
like that. I
Yeah,
mean, it's impossible to think it through. It requires a lot of brain training to do that.
right.
A lot of training, a lot of learning how to breathe. You practice when you're not doing it. When you're not overreacting, a lot of grounding. But that is how they're wired, that they are going to be more reactive. And then, they tend to fixate. Like if you have a tantrum in front of people and you're a teenager, it's
Ugh.
embarrassing. So then you've got the shame over that
And then
behavior.
they just ruminate on it over and right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you hold on to it and you can't get anything done. Like,
Yeah.
maybe
Well,
it happened hours ago.
yeah, and I know a lot of parents want to understand like what
Mhm.
happened. Like,
Mhm.
well, why did you go from 0 to 100 so fast? And it's kind of an unhelpful question, I would say,
Yeah.
because these kids or adults don't know, right? They don't know why. It's not like they
Right.
have an understanding of, well, mom and dad, my norepinephrine went high or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Right.
don't
Exactly.
have the process abilities to, and I think I get that a lot as parents are like, but I just don't get it. And I'm like, neither do they.
Right.
It's a hormone thing, right? It's a chemical thing. It's
It
not
is.
like they're not, it's not, they're not contemplating it. So they can't explain it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's so helpful to know because I think so many parents are just searching for answers and understanding, which
Yeah.
I get, but it's
Right.
like, well, really understanding the chemicals is really what needs to be understood.
It is what needs to be understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
that's what
helpful.
we need to
Good to
work
know.
on. Yeah. Yeah. Because, the parents, like you said, I mean, they love their children. They want to help. They want to make it better,
Yeah.
and they don't know how. And so it is harder to try and help their children both emotionally, academically,
Yeah.
socially. I mean, it requires a lot. It doesn't happen naturally.
Right. Right. Well,
Yeah.
and then of course, this is a whole nother topic, but really dealing with a dysregulated person is just a whole nother thing. But then I like to, when I'm in front of a person,
Mhm.
um, especially maybe one of my kids, I think, oh, I'm dealing with a brain. This is a certain kind of brain that is in front of me. And that has helped me so much.
That's
Be-
great.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's took me a while, of course, to figure that one out. But when I'm dealing with my ADHD kid, I'm like,
Okay.
one, one sentence text typically goes over pretty well.
Yeah.
Multiple, he's out.
Right.
And if there's a thread of like our family thread,
Mhm.
nope.
Yeah. Much.
He's not even reading those, right? He's maybe looking at a few of the pictures maybe we send.
Sure.
And then same with like invitations, I've learned. I'm just thinking about like scaffolding around like that dysregulation.
Mhm.
I've learned uh and this is just him, but he does way better with a call or in person than he even does with a text. And just figuring that out with your own child of any age, I think is so important to like, wait a second, when do they seem to, what seems to work, really?
Right. What seems to work. Yeah. And this is what parents have to figure out because, you meet one person with ADHD, you meet one person, right? So
Yeah,
there are patterns that we know about, but it's still going to be unique in each child. And so parents need to figure out their style of parenting and how to modify it, how to adjust it to their specific child. You might have two kids with ADHD. This is common in
yes,
the family. And you have to set the scaffolding a little bit differently.
Yeah, 100%.
Because you might have one that's more hyper, one that's not hyper,
More
but
depressed.
be an attentive type. Yeah, they tend to, depression is considered kind of a normal outcome. Depression, anxiety, unfortunately. So that's what we want to prevent by helping parents. So parents have to have a lot of patience with themselves as parents because we make mistakes.
Sure.
And they doing what you're doing, which is great, is retraining yourself as to how you even consider who is your child and what's happening with him.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Um, what are some of the differences between, I guess, male and female ADHD? Do they
Yeah.
present quite differently?
They do. There are similarities and there are differences, but it's really important to know. Historically, we've always thought of ADHD as like a boy
Mm,
problem, and we're better at diagnosing in girls, but there's still a lag. There's still a delay in diagnosing girls. So that's one problem
right.
because girls could be struggling with it, and it's the inattention is like the core piece, right, of ADHD with all of these attentional challenges, and they are pressuring themselves to compensate in a way that boys don't to the same degree. And I'm speaking very generally, and this is according to the research that's out there, because there's more pressure on girls to mask and to compensate socially,
Oh,
academically, to be people pleasers and what have
oh
you.
yeah. Well, and do you feel like the expectations for girls are higher? Is that where that comes
Yeah,
in?
when they're
Okay.
younger, especially when they're
Oh,
younger, to be, more emotionally healthy, or let's say emotional intelligence, to have more emotional intelligence. Generally, girls do have more. But a girl with ADHD, no, not necessarily. She's going to struggle and be easily overwhelmed. But she's going to feel this sort of peer pressure, this pressure to please the adults, this pressure to be more like her peers to manage it better.
mm,
And so then you get really the masking, and they're more likely to be perfectionistic, which
okay.
is also associated with depression and anxiety. So the
Oh,
rate of
sure.
depression and anxiety, I mean, the rates are higher with people with ADHD in general than neurotypicals. And then for girls, they're much higher than they are for boys. So the co-occurrence of the mental health issues, and this is the part that's really heartbreaking again, is that girls are more likely to have more self-harm and suicidal thoughts and suicidal attempts because they are burnt out on trying to maintain a certain standard within themselves to,
Mm,
to meet expectations. And so
I
you'll see
see.
the burnout later on in adolescence, right? Early
Yes.
adulthood. Yeah. And they just sort of give up. I mean, I know of a girl who did all of that throughout high school, high achieving, was able to
Oh,
perform
I
well.
see that.
They're performing well academically, so you're just not seeing it because teachers are
Right.
concerned about academic performance. Teachers are sometimes the person that, facilitates a diagnosis. And they're doing well. And this one young woman got into a really amazing university and was all set to go, was doing the sports, got the good grades, and was just burnt out, became suicidal, needed to take a year off, get help, go to wilderness, learn some mindfulness and some grounding and what have you, and was able to function much better once she got to the university
Oh,
because she was able to let go of some of those, like, perfectionistic, almost OCD patterns of holding it all together.
oh gosh.
Yeah.
I want to offer, I see that a lot with my clients.
Yeah.
Some of my clients is that high school overachieving, they're
Mhm,
in dance and debate and they're
mhm,
getting straight A's and they have the perfect quote, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever.
mhm.
And it's just so much to hold.
It's a
And the
lot.
parents are elated, right?
Yes,
Thinking, oh my gosh, I've got got a great
right.
kid. Like, look at the context. They're doing great. And then they just crash
They
hard,
crash. Yeah,
hard. Oh, I do. I see that a lot. And the parents
yeah.
are left very confused and very surprised, right?
Yeah.
They're just like, what happened? What's going on? You were, and then they just spend so much time comparing who they have in front of them to who they used to have, as a kid.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's exactly right. And so that's why it's helpful to have the diagnosis, which
yeah,
gets, it still gets missed, or you got the parents denying, and you don't have maybe the typical symptoms that you're expecting,
right.
or because some folks do well academically. I mean, a lot of folks with ADHD really struggle academically,
Yeah,
but there are some that do fine. They can hyper focus on their academics.
yeah,
I mean, hyper focus is a double-edged sword, but it can be really
yeah,
helpful in certain situations. And if they're doing well academically, then it is more likely that the diagnosis could get missed.
yeah. I can
Yeah,
see that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's a great lead into what are some of the strengths, of people with ADHD? Because it really is just a different wiring, right?
it is. It is. Yeah. And in general, as a society, it's great if we alter our environments. It's more accommodating. So I just want to put that out there. We're not there yet, but there are strengths, and it's important to see that. It's also important for parents on a regular basis to see specific strengths in their kids
Oh, I love
and
that.
validate them. You want to catch them being good
Yeah.
and identify strengths and on a regular basis and see them for yourself, because then you have more compassion for your young person, and then
Love
they,
that.
they they can build more self-esteem, because it's typical that folks with ADHD have lower self-esteem because they've received a lot of
Yeah.
criticism. For
Well,
sure,
and they're comparing themselves to the other
they're doing that,
people
and
and
everybody else is doing that to them, typically. But strengths, I mean, so the hyper focus, for example, you could hyper focus on something that you shouldn't be focusing on, right? You could
like
spend
video games or something. Yes.
video games, right? And video game addiction is a real thing. And but you could also hyper focus on something that interests you. I mean, so think about uh, a scientist that's really committed to finding the cure for cancer. Okay,
Sure.
you have the energy, you have a different level of energy, you can hyper focus, and you can maintain that. So people with ADHD, when they're in the right, let's say, career or vocational or whatever environment that's fulfilling a purpose for them, they could really thrive because they could hyper
Yeah.
focus on areas of interest. So school is really difficult because you need to hyper focus on the interesting subjects.
Right.
Well, you have to focus on them, but you also need to focus on the boring stuff. So boredom
Mm.
is really, really difficult with ADHD. But
Checks
it's
out.
something it's yes, it does. And it's hard for all of us, but we know how to kind of barrel our way through it.
Right. Yeah. One of my older boys who has ADHD, luckily, his therapist was like, hey, you have a choice. You can hyper focus on video games. And he was very good at video games, as you can imagine. So he was actually going
Yeah,
to, he was like playing for money. That made,
right. Yeah.
I, gosh, that's,
One of
what is
those conventions.
Yeah, like I could write something like that. And he's like, or you can, and this was in college, and he's like, or you can focus on your degree, which was art, it's graphic design, because he's so creative.
Yes.
Like, wow,
Yes.
wow, creative. I'm like, how how did you come up with that? I mean, he's brilliant in that
I
way.
know what you
So
mean.
that's a strength that I've seen in one of my own boys is
Yeah.
just out of the ballpark creative. And
Right.
so the therapist is like, you get to choose, right? You get to choose what you focus on. So choose wisely. It was kind of the advice. And I was like, and it really helped my son. I'm like, well, that's awesome that it
That is
worked.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's
Yeah.
like, and on the weekends when you maybe the college work is done, go play the video game. Like
Right.
that kind of a thing. So
Yeah,
it really helped
absolutely.
him, I guess, take accountability and ownership over where he hyper focused.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of the skill building. I mean,
Yeah.
hope to build. But creativity is one of those strengths of people with ADHD. You'll see really high levels of
Yeah.
creativity. It's really impressive,
Mm.
actually. You
Yeah.
know, yeah. And a lot of entrepreneurs
Mhm.
have ADHD a lot because, like, again, if they're excited about their business that they want to launch, they could hyper focus on it.
Yeah.
And
And managing their own time, feeling in control of that, I think is
yeah,
huge.
it's huge. It's huge. So there are definite strengths that we want to see, and sometimes those strengths are more visible when
Mm,
they, again, when they're adults and they don't have to conform to all the academic requirements that are tedious.
right.
Sports, they could be really great at sports, and put that energy into a sport that they love. They really have to love it so that it's easy for them.
Yeah.
And then the physical activity we know is good for the brain. It's good for
Right.
every brain, but it's really good for the ADHD brain,
Yeah.
and
Ugh.
what a great therapist. I mean, it's also important to have therapists that understand executive functioning because a lot of
Right.
workers, they don't all, we do work with it a lot, but is some are better at really understanding that and working with it than others.
Yeah.
You want that too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just want to go back for a minute. I think it's so important when you were saying about the word self-loathing, which maybe is too extreme, but that
It's
inner turmoil
mhm,
of feeling different,
mhm,
acting different,
mhm.
not falling into like, why can't I sit in a class? Why
Yes.
am I constantly fiddling? Why do I doodle on my page? Why can't I absolutely like I can't stand to be here anymore? Or it's there is a I know going back, but I think it's just so important to help the parents be aware of what might be happening internally
Mhm,
because some it's very hard to understand if you haven't been there or if you're in denial yourself. And I
mhm.
think it's just so important to have some kind of education around what your child might be going through. I felt like that needs to be said again.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that up because a lot of folks with ADHD do develop self-loathing, low self-esteem, get
Yeah.
a lot of shame. They're comparing themselves to their peers who just have an easier time getting the assignments done, getting the assignments in,
Yeah.
and it's
They just think like,
not
what's wrong with me? Why am I broken? Like,
this. And then, when they get to right now, in my program, they get to me as young adults and they're really floundering. And this is what I hear every day. I'm just appalled with myself that I can't do, with what my peers are able to do, that it's so hard for me just to do little things to get
yeah.
small tasks done or small
Yeah.
assignments,
Ugh,
And so it's very easy for that to happen. It's not all parents. Parents are important, right? Because we're with the child more often than not, but you've got teachers, you've got peers, other parents,
ugh.
friends,
Coaches.
coaches, you've got lost relationships because that's part of ADHD is sometimes you lose relationships, you miss cues or what have you. You're lonely by the time you're a teenager or a young adult. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
anxiety, social anxiety, depression. It's just so common. And so we do want parents to know. That's why, again, it's important to have an understanding what is ADHD? What is the big picture of ADHD and what do we do about it? And parents need their support too. They need whether it's therapy or
Yeah.
some kind of a support system, they need help creating the tools that are going to help their children.
Yes.
And I will say this with parents, if parents learn some mindfulness techniques, as you can imagine, that's really helpful for anybody and anybody with
Absolutely.
ADHD. But when parents of kids, even teenagers, they can be teenagers if they're living in the home. When the parents learn mindfulness techniques, that does help for the child to be a little bit more regulated, emotionally
100%.
regulated. So everything that we do, like if we're anxious as parents, if we manage our anxiety better, we don't need to say this is what I'm doing to manage my anxiety to our child.
Right.
Just doing it and our anxiety reducing or depression reducing or what have you, our equanimity improving does have an immediate effect on the child. So
Yes.
that's a little bit different than the scaffolding, which is a little bit easier for parents to take on.
Mm,
It's going to have an effect. I mean,
yeah.
we want to teach those tools too.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I could not agree more. It's so important. And it has helped. I mean, that's the whole premise of my podcast is, the change begins with us as parents. And so I truly believe that, yeah,
Mhm.
mindfulness has helped me substantially
Mhm.
and of course affected yeah, my ADHD kid, because I've learned to take things not personally,
Right.
learning how to, do all the accommodations so that we can have the relationship that both of us want,
Right.
and I could just love him for who he is and all his many awesome
Exactly. Exactly.
abilities and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Me too. Me too. It's been a game changer.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, game changer. I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, what a wonderful episode. Thank you so much for being here. And you started your own program called Beach Cities Gateway. Do you want to just kind of talk about that for a minute?
Sure, sure. I mean, specifically started this for teens and young adults that were neurodivergent, that are neurodivergent, because I saw the need, for my now young adults that, for extra support and services, and also with some of the teenagers that I was working with in my private practice. I have a private therapy practice. Um, and Gateway for short in the South Bay of Los Angeles. And we provide therapy, but with the wraparound coaching and mentoring for the executive functioning skills. And I'm working with the older ages. I mean, there's a lot of support for the younger ages,
Mm.
executive functioning therapists and coaching, but also there's more scaffolding in general for kids before they graduate high school. So this is really for, again, the older teens and the young adults struggling with all of these areas of executive functioning. And the core service is the coaching, and it is very specific executive functioning coaching. I'm a huge fan of coaching, a huge fan.
Great.
And, with the combination of the therapy. So we have a little team that works with folks. They can come to us. We go to them. A lot of the coaching is done in person in the moment. So if somebody needs to work on their social skills, we could do that in the moment. We can go someplace and help them to work on that. We help them to work on organizing their academics, or to work on time management or hygiene or cleanliness or what have you. But we're doing that in real life, in the real world with them.
Awesome.
And that's how you're supposed to work with somebody with ADHD. There's a little bit of a disconnect when you're just talking about it in a therapeutic session, and then they're expected to follow through on all
Totally.
of these tasks. So this is really that extra support and skill building for them so that they can then internalize the skill building.
Yes. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, if you guys want to know more about Debbie and Beach Cities Gateway, that'll be all be on the show notes. And I just thank you so much for being here. Loved it.
Thank you, Beth.
Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.